He came every morning without fail. A golden retriever with tired eyes and a single white flower clenched gently between his teeth. He never barked, never begged. He only sat at the same porch, in front of the same faded blue door, as if waiting for someone the world had already forgotten. But when a stranger returned and opened that door again, the whole town remembered. Maple Hollow, Oregon, early October. The sky over the small riverside town was a cool gray quilt, stitched with thin threads of sunlight peeking through scattered clouds. Mornings were damp with mist rising off the Willamette River, and the air carried the earthy scent of falling leaves and chimney smoke. The town stirred slowly, like an old dog stretching in the cold. It was here, along the quiet stretch of Maple Street, that something gentle yet inexplicably profound was unfolding, though few truly noticed at first. Rachel Moore had only been back in Maple Hollow for 3 days. She was 26, with auburn hair tied in a low braid, freckled skin that still carried the tan from a city summer, and green eyes often hidden behind rectangular glasses. She walked with an observant stillness, like someone who'd grown used to noticing the quiet things people ignored. After finishing her degree in journalism, she returned to live with her grandmother while waiting for a job placement. Her life in the city had felt too fast, too loud, too impersonal. Here, the slowness felt like a second chance. On her morning walks, Rachel took the same route down Maple Street toward the cafe by the library, crossing the park and passing the same cluster of Victorian-style houses with white trim and creaky porches. On this particular morning, she paused by the iron bench under the dogwood tree near the end of the block. A soft movement caught her attention. A dog, large and golden, was padding across the empty park with slow, purposeful steps. The golden retriever was unmistakable. His coat was a weathered gold, faded lighter at the tail and ears, his fur gently ruffled by the breeze. He looked to be around 4 years old, his build strong but lean, with a slightly limping back leg. His eyes were what arrested Rachel, deep brown, rimmed with weariness, as though he'd seen something too old for his years. Between his teeth he carried a flower, not a bouquet, not a sprig, but a single bloom, fresh and white, likely plucked from the dogwood tree behind him. He made his way to the porch of a small weather-beaten house, number 12, with peeling paint and a faded blue door that hadn't been opened in a while. The house had lace curtains that hung motionless, and flower boxes with dried stems instead of blossoms. Rachel watched, unmoving, as the dog climbed the steps and gently laid the flower on the top one, directly before the threshold. Then, he sat. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He simply waited, staring at the door as if he could will it to open. His tail rested limp behind him, not wagging, not tense. Minutes passed. He remained still. Then, after what felt like a silent ritual, he stood, looked one last time at the door, and walked away the same way he came, retracing his steps through the park. Rachel stood behind the bench, half hidden by a hedge, her breath caught. Something in the dog's actions, his intention, his discipline, gnawed at her curiosity. Was he lost? Trained? Waiting for someone? And why always a flower? She waited a few minutes more, then walked up to the blue door. The flower lay there perfectly centered. A magnolia, its petals unbruised. The next morning, Rachel returned early, coffee in hand, notebook in her bag. The dog came again, same time, same route. She watched again. Same flower. Same wait. Same departure. The third day, the same. On the fourth day, she brought her camera. Rachel wasn't the only one who had noticed. Across the street, an older man sat on his porch sketching in a worn leather-bound pad. He was slender, with a silver beard, thick-rimmed glasses, and a brown cardigan too big for his frame. His name was Thomas Granger, 72, a widower and retired art teacher who had lived in Maple Hollow most of his life. His wife, Eloise, had died 7 years ago from a stroke while tending their garden. Since then, he had rarely spoken to anyone outside of grocery store cashiers and the occasional book club member who passed him in the library. He spoke through his art now, mostly watercolors of old buildings, lamplight, and lately, the golden dog. Rachel approached him later that afternoon. "You've seen him too, haven't you?" she asked. Her voice was soft but carried that edge of eager questioning journalists often held back. Thomas nodded. "Every morning, same time. Been watching him for a few weeks. First I thought it was just strange habit. Now, not so sure. Does he belong to someone?" "Used to, I think. That house there, number 12, was owned by an old woman named Lucille Dawson. Lived alone after her husband passed. Had a dog like that. I only saw her a few times, she kept to herself." "What happened?" "She died. Quietly, I heard. In her sleep about 3 months back. Her family came, sold the place. Dog was gone. Didn't think of it much. Then one morning, there he was. Sitting on her porch." Rachel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. "So, he comes back. Every day. He brings a flower." "Every day," Thomas said. "Same tree. Dogwood. Like he remembers." Rachel nodded slowly. "I think I'm going to follow him tomorrow." Thomas didn't look surprised. "If you do, take notes. And tell his story right." That night Rachel couldn't sleep. She went over the photographs on her camera, each one with the dog in profile, the flower in his mouth, the pale blue door in soft morning light. It looked like something out of a children's book, something impossible, tender, and heartbreaking. But it was real. She wrote the first lines of her blog post that night, just a draft. "Every morning, a dog brings a flower to a door that no longer opens. He waits. And he hopes. Maybe he remembers something we forgot." The town hadn't noticed. Not really. A few neighbors may have seen the dog, assumed he was a stray or that someone nearby was caring for him. But no one had connected the dots. No one had stayed long enough to see the pattern. The next morning would change that. But for now, Rachel looked out the guest room window at the quiet street, and the pale glow of the porch lights across Maple Street. Somewhere out there, a dog named Sunny was curled up beneath a dogwood tree, waiting for morning, waiting to remember. Maple Hollow awoke beneath a silver dawn, with light dew still clinging to the grass and the distant call of geese overhead signaling the shifting season. The sky was pale, streaked with lavender clouds, and the town moved slowly beneath the weight of another quiet morning. A chill drifted off the Willamette River, brushing against windows and gathering in the corners of porches. Rachel Moore stood on her grandmother's front step, bundled in a green corduroy coat, camera slung across her chest, and a notebook wedged into her back pocket. She was ready. Across the street, the faint rustling of dogwood leaves announced his arrival. Sunny moved with the same quiet determination as before, golden fur damp from the grass, his posture dignified, as if carrying something far more than a flower. This morning's bloom was smaller, a white camellia, imperfect but fresh. He plucked it with delicate precision from the same tree and turned toward Maple Street with the steadiness of ritual. Rachel followed at a distance, careful not to let her boots crunch too loudly on the gravel. The dog didn't look back. He crossed the street, made his way through the small square park, dodging lampposts, empty benches, and fallen leaves, and headed straight for the blue-doored house. Once again, he placed the flower at the same step, waited for several minutes, unmoving, and then turned. But today, instead of leaving the way he came, Sunny padded alongside the side hedge of the house and slipped through a narrow gap between the garden fence and a crooked hydrangea bush. Rachel hesitated, then slipped in after him, pushing branches aside until she emerged into a narrow path flanked by overgrown bushes. A rusted gate at the back of the property creaked open under Sunny's gentle push, revealing a worn footpath leading into a stand of pine trees. The path curved behind a row of vacant lots, ending at a weather-beaten shed tucked behind a dilapidated two-story house. Its paint had peeled to a ghostly gray, windows were covered with warped plywood, and weeds had conquered the lawn. Yet amidst the decay, the dog moved with grace, unbothered. He made his way to a far corner of the yard where a sagging pile of leaves and an old sleeping mat rested beneath a maple tree. There, Sunny circled once, then lay down with a deep sigh, the flowers still resting beside his paw. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a sanctuary. She stepped forward slowly and crouched behind the rusted fence post, raising her camera. The shutter clicked gently, once, twice, capturing the golden figure curled beside a memory. She sat there, barely breathing, watching him rest. Later that morning, Rachel returned home and uploaded the photos to her laptop. Each image was intimate and haunting, Sunny with the flower in his mouth, Sunny placing it gently on the porch step, Sunny curled alone beneath the maple, his eyes half closed in a pose that spoke of waiting. She opened her blog and began to write. Every morning, a silent figure delivers a message. Not with a bark, not with a howl, but with a single flower. He does not ask for attention. He does not seek applause. He only remembers. She included the photos, her observations, and the story as she now understood it. But she didn't publish the post, not yet. Something told her the story wasn't complete. That afternoon, Rachel visited the town library, a whitewashed building with green shutters and a red-leafed oak shading the front walk. Inside, tucked into a quiet corner, was Thomas Granger. He sat hunched over a sketch pad, a thermos of tea at his side, pencil moving with deliberate softness across paper. Rachel greeted him gently. "I followed him this morning." Thomas looked up. His face, always calm, carried a flicker of interest. "And? He sleeps behind a house. Abandoned. There's a mat. Some kind of nest. It's personal." Thomas nodded slowly. "Number 9, Riverbend Lane. I should have known. That was Lucille's family home. She never moved out after her husband died. Said the house was too full of ghosts to leave, but too empty without them." Rachel sat beside him. "Do you think he waits for her?" "I think he's doing what we all wish we could," Thomas murmured. "Carrying the grief until it makes sense again." He closed his sketch pad, revealing his drawing, Sunny, with a camellia in his mouth, staring up at the blue door. It was delicate and raw, and the resemblance was striking. "You should publish your piece," he said softly. "Let people see what love looks like when no one's watching." Rachel smiled, moved. "Will you help me fill in the gaps? I want to know who she really was." Thomas paused. Lucille Dawson was a quiet woman, white-haired, tall, always wore her late husband's flannel shirts around the garden. Spoke with a soft southern lilt even though she'd been here for decades. Loved baking. And that dog, Sunny, was her whole world after her stroke. She used to say he knew when she needed help even before she did. Rachel took notes quickly. "Thank you. This matters." That night, Rachel sat by the window with her grandmother, sipping hot cider and watching the lights of Maple Street flicker to life. Her grandmother, Marion Moore, 81, was a sprightly woman with sharp cheekbones, bright blue eyes, and an ever-present knitted shawl draped over her shoulders. Though her hands had begun to tremble in recent years, her mind remained razor-sharp. "Dogs don't forget," Marion said, rocking in her chair. "They remember the tone of your voice more than the words. They remember the shape of your absence." Rachel looked at her. "You've seen him too." "Oh, honey. That dog's been putting a flower on that doorstep for weeks. I just figured someone would notice eventually." Rachel smiled, then opened her laptop and uploaded the final version of her blog post. She titled it, "The Dog Who Waits with Flowers." She scheduled it to go live at 6 a.m. And just like that, the seed was planted. Maple Hollow, Oregon, was wrapped in mist the morning after Rachel's blog post went live. A fine drizzle hung in the air like a veil, softening the outlines of trees and rooftops. The sidewalks glistened beneath street lamps that still glowed faintly in the dim light. Rachel sat at the cafe by the library, the aroma of cinnamon rolls mixing with damp autumn leaves as she refreshed the Post's dashboard again and again. By 9 a.m., the blog had over 3,000 views. Comments poured in, locals recognizing the house, others remembering Lucille Dawson, and strangers moved by Sunny's quiet devotion. One message in particular caught Rachel's eye, sent privately through her contact page. "I think the dog in your story belonged to my great-aunt Lucy. I'm coming to Maple Hollow. Melissa." Rachel blinked. She hadn't expected a response like that so quickly. She left the cafe and made her way across town, passing groups of schoolchildren walking in single-file lines and joggers bundled in sweatshirts. When she arrived at number 12, Maple Street, a small group of townspeople were already gathered, standing behind the picket fence. A few had placed daisies and sunflowers next to Sunny's daily camellia. A boy had left a hand-drawn picture of a dog with "Good Boy" scrawled above it in red crayon. Sunny was there, as always, seated like a statue on the top step, eyes fixed on the faded blue door. He didn't respond to the crowd. He ignored the phones, the whispers, the clucking of tongues. He had only one purpose, and that purpose hadn't changed. Rachel approached slowly, crouching at the edge of the path. "Good morning, Sunny," she said gently. He didn't turn. But she noticed the faintest movement in his ears. From behind the crowd, Thomas Granger appeared, wearing a thick charcoal overcoat and a green scarf that had likely been hand-knitted by someone who once loved him. He held a sketchpad under one arm and a thermos of coffee in the other. "He doesn't want attention," he said quietly to Rachel. "He wants peace. But the town doesn't know how to watch without interrupting." Rachel nodded. "Maybe this story's getting too loud." Thomas sipped his coffee. "The story isn't loud. The world is. The story's still whispering." Just then, a silver sedan pulled up along the curb. The door opened, and a woman stepped out, shielding herself from the drizzle with a burgundy umbrella. She was in her early 30s, with wavy chestnut hair that spilled down the back of a navy pea coat, and pale gray eyes that looked as if they had seen too much too early. Her heels clicked as she approached the fence, hesitating only once when her gaze fell upon Sunny. Rachel moved to greet her. "Melissa?" The woman nodded. "You must be Rachel. Thank you for writing what you did. I never would have known otherwise." Rachel offered a gentle smile. "You knew Lucille. She was my great-aunt. We called her Aunt Lucy. I grew up in Portland but spent summers here when I was a kid. After college, I moved to Texas. I hadn't been back in years." Her eyes filled as she looked toward the house. "That door. I used to sit on the porch with her drinking lemonade. She always said that house was the last place she ever truly felt home." Rachel pointed softly. "That's Sunny. He hasn't missed a day." Melissa stepped forward. As she neared, Sunny rose slowly. His tail didn't wag. He simply looked at her, head tilted, nose twitching, then took one hesitant step forward. "Sunny," Melissa whispered. The dog stared. And then something changed in his eyes. A flicker of recognition, distant and uncertain at first, like a dream trying to break through sleep. He stepped closer, then sniffed her coat, and without a sound, pressed his head against her knees. Rachel felt her chest tighten. "He remembers," Melissa murmured. "Oh, God, he remembers me." She knelt, wrapping her arms around his neck. Sunny exhaled heavily, a sound that seemed to lift something from his chest. The crowd grew silent. Phones were lowered. Some turned away to wipe their eyes. Thomas sketched rapidly, capturing the moment as it unfolded, a woman and a dog, the rain, the gate, the story that had come full circle. Later that afternoon, Rachel sat again with Thomas at the library. The local newspaper had picked up the story. So had a regional outlet from Portland. The blog had exploded. Strangers were sending messages offering to adopt Sunny, donate money, or visit the house. Rachel declined them all on Sunny's behalf. "He's not a tourist stop," she told one reporter. "He's a heart that's been trying not to break." Thomas agreed. The world doesn't need another viral moment. It needs places where grief can finish what it started. Melissa was staying at the local inn. That night, she met Rachel and Thomas at the diner for pie and warm coffee. She spoke more of Lucille, how she used to bake cranberry scones every Friday, how she never learned to drive but knew every bus route in town, how she once claimed that Sunny barked twice when he wanted her to take her heart pills. She believed in that dog more than in most people, Melissa said. After her husband died, Sunny was the only one who could get her out of bed. Rachel scribbled the words in her notebook. As they walked back toward the inn, Sunny trotted beside Melissa, not on a leash, but close, his side brushing hers every few steps. The drizzle had stopped, and the stars were peeking through the clouds. As they passed the old house on Maple Street, Sunny paused, looked at the step where he had laid his flower just that morning, and kept walking. The morning sun returned to Maple Hollow with a quiet brilliance, casting golden slats of light across the autumn leaves and warming the cracked sidewalks of Maple Street. The house at number 12 stood under that light like a sleeping relic, beautiful in its wear and tear. The blue door, though faded and chipped, had never felt more alive. By now, it had become a symbol, painted, sketched, photographed, and shared across thousands of screens. And at its base, as always, lay a fresh flower. But today, something was different. Today, the crowd had grown too large. By 8 a.m., a small circle of curious townspeople had expanded into a steady stream of cars, passers-by with lattes, tourists with cameras. People had driven in from Portland and Eugene, some with dogs of their own, others simply drawn by the tenderness of a story that felt more human than most headlines. Children pointed. Grandmothers cried. Reporters hovered. Melissa watched all this from across the street, arms crossed tightly over her coat, Sunny seated loyally by her feet. His ears twitched with every flashbulb, every click of a shutter. He didn't growl, he simply looked tired. Melissa bent down and whispered, "You don't need to prove anything to them." Rachel arrived minutes later, breathless from the hill, a camera bag on her shoulder and concern etched across her brow. "This is too much," she murmured. Thomas Granger stood beside her, his scarf flapping slightly in the breeze. This was bound to happen. People want to believe in something good. But sometimes even good things get trampled in the rush. The blue door remained closed. At 8:30 a.m., a silver Lexus pulled into the driveway. The engine cut off, and out stepped a well-dressed couple in their late 40s. The man was tall and lean, with close-cropped gray hair and a heavy gold watch. The woman wore a cashmere coat and oversized sunglasses, though the morning sun was still soft. They walked toward the house, eyes narrowing at the crowd on their lawn. The man raised his voice. "Excuse me, what is all this?" No one answered immediately. He turned toward Melissa, who had now stood up straighter, arms stiff. "This is private property. You're trespassing." Rachel stepped forward. "Sir, I'm Rachel Moore. I wrote the article about the dog who returns to this house." "I know who you are," the man snapped. "You're the reason our front step is a petting zoo." The woman, lips tight with distaste, pointed to the flowers Sunny had left. "This mud is scratching our paint and dirtying our home every day. We've had enough." Melissa stepped in. "That mutt is Sunny. He lived here long before you bought this house." "Well, we bought it," the man said, folding his arms. "He didn't come with the deed." Voices rose. A murmur of protest echoed among the onlookers. Phones came out. Rachel raised her hand to de-escalate. "Please. This dog is grieving. He's not causing damage, he's mourning." The woman scoffed. "Dogs don't mourn. They follow routine. That's it. If he shows up again, we're calling animal control. Thomas, who had remained silent until then, spoke with quiet steel. If you knew what love looked like, you wouldn't need to be told it doesn't end when someone dies. The man stepped forward. I don't care what kind of Hallmark speech you think this is. This is our home now. Sonny took a step toward the porch again, flower in his mouth. The man moved toward him. Then, the woman screamed. No. Not again. She rushed forward, brandishing a straw broom she had grabbed from beside the porch. With sudden fury, she swung it downward, swiping at the air and the dog's head. Sonny yelped, startled, dropping the flower. The petals scattered across the pavement like broken porcelain. He backed away, tail between his legs, his eyes wide with confusion. Rachel gasped. Stop. Melissa dropped to her knees beside Sonny, pulling him close. What are you doing? I warned you, the woman hissed. That thing comes back, it's gone. Phones captured every moment. In less than an hour, the video was online. By noon, the town of Maple Hollow was ablaze with emotion. The town's Facebook group had over 500 angry comments. Regional news began requesting interviews. The mayor received 2 formal complaints and 1 hand-delivered petition. Rachel's blog now had tens of thousands of views, and her inbox was flooded with requests, letters, and offers from rescue organizations and journalists. Animal rights activists from Portland were already on the road. In the midst of all this, Rachel returned to the library to find Thomas seated as always, sketching furiously. They're trying to erase him, Rachel said, pacing. No, Thomas replied calmly. They've simply forgotten what it means to remember. I want to do something, she said. More than blog posts and photos. Something that lasts. Then do it, he said. But remember, it must come from the same place Sonny's flowers do. Not for applause. For love. That night, Melissa sat on the floor of her rented room at the inn, Sonny asleep beside her. She stroked the soft fur behind his ears, watching the rise and fall of his breathing. On the nightstand beside her lay a faded photo of Lucille Dawson, seated on the porch with a glass of lemonade in hand, Sonny at her feet. Melissa whispered, I should have come back sooner. She opened her laptop and began to type. The sun hadn't yet cleared the low hills behind Maple Hollow when the town's inboxes, feeds, and doorsteps buzzed with noise louder than any thunderstorm. The video of Sonny being chased away with a broom had not only gone viral, it had ignited something. Newspapers printed his story on their front pages. Morning talk shows in New York mentioned the loyal Golden of Oregon. Dozens of visitors now left flowers in silent protest on the sidewalk of Maple Street. But the house remained locked behind its blue door, and Sonny hadn't returned. Melissa awoke early, her sleep broken by dreams of the past, of sipping lemonade with Aunt Lucy, of chasing butterflies in the overgrown backyard, and of Sonny, years younger, curling up beside her feet as a teenager when she cried over her parents' divorce. Those memories were gentle but heavy, and she wore them now like a second skin. She got dressed slowly, blue jeans, flannel, boots caked from yesterday's chaos. In her hands, she held a small object wrapped in an embroidered handkerchief. She left the inn and walked toward the dogwood tree in the park near number 12. It was here that she found him. Sonny was curled beneath the roots of the tree, half hidden in the tall grass. His body was still, his coat damp from the morning dew. For a moment, Melissa feared the worst, until his ear twitched. She stepped softly toward him. Hey, old boy, she whispered, kneeling. He didn't lift his head, but his tail thumped twice against the earth. She unfolded the handkerchief. Inside was an old brass dog tag, weathered, the edges smoothed by time. The name, Sonny, was etched in faded letters, along with an address that no longer belonged to him. You gave her everything, didn't you? Melissa's voice trembled. And she gave everything to you. Sonny lifted his head then. His eyes met hers, older, sadder, but recognizing. He inched forward, pressed his forehead against her knee. Melissa let the silence speak. After several minutes, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. She opened Rachel's blog, where the latest post, titled, "When Love is Chased Away," sat atop a flood of comments, donations, and stories from people who had once known Lucille or had loved a dog like Sunny. One comment stood out. If only someone in her family could take him home. He deserves his story to end in peace, not exile. Melissa stood. We're not going to wait anymore. She walked back into town, Sunny trotting slowly beside her. Rachel sat on the front steps of the library, reading messages on her laptop while sipping coffee from a paper cup. When Melissa approached, she looked up immediately. You found him, Rachel said softly, eyes widening as Sunny settled beside Melissa's feet. I think he found himself, Melissa answered. And I found something else too. She handed Rachel the old dog tag. Rachel turned it over in her palm, lips parting. I want to buy the house back, Melissa continued. Rachel blinked. You're serious? As serious as someone can be when she realizes she was too late once, and refuses to be again. But the couple. They'll sell. Melissa's voice was calm but resolute. Everyone has a price. And the entire town wants them gone. Rachel exhaled. You'll need help. I want to make them an offer they can't ignore. A fair one, but loud enough they know it comes with the weight of everyone they've offended. Later that day, the plan unfolded. Rachel reached out to her followers, including real estate experts, lawyers, and Lucille's former neighbors. Within hours, a petition gathered 50,000 signatures. An online fundraiser raised enough for Melissa to make an above-market offer. The town mayor quietly encouraged the transaction. The couple who owned number 12 received the message in a manila envelope, hand-delivered by Thomas Granger himself. He said nothing when he handed it to them, just a firm nod and the same unblinking stare that had once commanded silent art rooms full of restless teenagers. 2 days passed. On the third morning, the Lexus was gone. So were the blinds from the windows and the for sale sign discreetly posted behind the azaleas. The house now belonged to Melissa. The official deed transfer happened quietly at the courthouse. But the real moment, the one the town would remember, happened when Melissa returned with Sunny in tow. A gentle crowd had gathered across the street, waiting without being asked. Rachel stood at the front, notebook in hand, and Thomas painted in a foldable canvas chair near the curb. Children held hand-drawn signs, "Welcome home, Sunny," and "Blue Door Forever." Melissa unlocked the door for the first time in years. It creaked, the hinges still stiff, but the air inside carried the faintest trace of lavender and old wood. She stepped aside, letting Sunny move forward. He entered slowly, sniffing, tail raised slightly, head lowered in reverence. He made his way through the hallway, past the empty sitting room, into the kitchen, then up the stairs, pausing only once before climbing. When he reached the bedroom at the end of the hall, he stopped. Melissa watched as he circled the old corner by the window and lay down. The same place he used to nap beside Aunt Lucy's bed. No bark. No sound. Just peace. Rachel slipped inside, camera lowered. She whispered, "He remembers every inch." Melissa nodded. And now he's home. Autumn deepened in Maple Hollow. The leaves turned richer, painting the town in gold, amber, and flame. The breeze carried the scent of pine and chimney smoke, and the blue door at number 12 no longer stood as a monument to loss, but as a gateway to healing. Inside, the house breathed again. Curtains once drawn in grief now fluttered in the morning light. Dust had been swept from floors long untouched, and old photo frames returned to their places, some with Aunt Lucille smiling in the garden, others with Sunny as a young pup lying on the porch steps. The house no longer felt haunted. It felt inhabited. Melissa stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, a flower-streaked apron around her waist as she prepared cranberry scones, Aunt Lucy's recipe, rediscovered in a yellowed notebook tucked behind a drawer. Sonny lay nearby on the kitchen mat, his head resting on his front paws, eyes half closed but watching her every movement with quiet contentment. The town had changed too. What began as a story of one dog's devotion had awakened something forgotten. Strangers met in parks to walk their dogs together. Elderly residents began tending neglected porches, inspired by the simple dignity of a return gesture. Rachel received letters from veterans, widows, and children, all telling stories of pets who waited, who watched, who loved longer than anyone expected. And Sonny, he had become something more than a symbol. He had become a friend. Children passed his story along at school. Cafes offered dog treats named Sonny's Bloom. A metal plaque was installed at the base of the dogwood tree in the square, in honor of Sonny, whose love did not fade with absence. Rachel documented every chapter in a book she hadn't planned to write. Its title was simple, The House with the Blue Door. Thomas Granger contributed the illustrations. His hands were slower now, but never had his lines been more vivid. His drawing of Sonny lying at Lucille's bedside was so lifelike it made even the printer misty-eyed. On the dedication page, he wrote, "For those who wait. And those worth waiting for." One chilly Saturday morning, Melissa hosted a small gathering at the house. Neighbors brought folding chairs, children came with sketchbooks and chalk, and Rachel brought a basket of dog-safe scones. Sonny, freshly groomed, wore a simple green ribbon on his collar, the same shade as Aunt Lucille's garden gloves. Rachel gave a short speech on the porch. Sometimes, the smallest acts, like placing a flower on a doorstep, are the ones that echo the loudest. Sonny didn't ask for attention. He didn't seek sympathy. He simply remembered. And because he remembered, we remembered too. She stepped aside, and Thomas, with his signature soft voice, read a poem he'd written. A petal falls, a shadow waits. Beyond the gate that sorrow makes. But through the dark, a loyal light will lay its love in morning white. When he finished, there was no applause, only stillness, reverent and warm. Melissa crouched beside Sonny, kissed the top of his head, and whispered, "You brought her back to us." Later that evening, when the house had quieted and the visitors had gone, Melissa sat alone in the sunroom, the same room where Aunt Lucille once read her novels and watched the rain. Sonny lay at her feet, and together they watched dusk settle over Maple Street. She sipped tea from Lucille's favorite china mug. Outside, someone had left a small flower on the bottom step, a gesture returned. Sonny lifted his head but didn't rise. He watched the flower through the window, blinked slowly, then rested his muzzle against Melissa's ankle. For the first time in months, the door no longer needed to open. In a world that often forgets to slow down, one dog's quiet devotion reminded an entire town what it means to remember. Love, the kind that plants a flower each day and waits for no applause, doesn't end with absence, it endures in silence, in loyalty, and in the gentle persistence of memory. Sometimes, it takes a forgotten porch, a faded blue door, and the soft footsteps of a golden heart to teach us that grief isn't an end, but a garden waiting to bloom again.